She gave him her kidney. She gave him everything. Her love, her trust, her future. But when she caught him in the ultimate betrayal, cheating with another woman, the man she saved, the man she believed she would spend the rest of her life with, did the unthinkable. He shot her, left her bleeding, shattered, and broken. But that's not where this twisted tale ends. What followed was a dark twist no one could have predicted. A deadly game of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that would expose a shocking truth no one could have ever imagined. Vanessa Carter was a woman who believed in the purity of love, the kind of love where sacrifices were made for those who mattered most. As a devoted nurse, Vanessa spent her days saving lives, always putting others before herself. Her compassion ran deep, her heart was kind, and she would never have hesitated to do anything for the people she cared about. That's how she ended up saving Daniel Reynolds, a man she thought she would share a future with, a man who had nothing left but a failing kidney, a desperate plea for help, and her endless devotion. Vanessa's decision to donate her kidney wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a promise to stand by him, to fight through the darkest days together. And when she did, she thought that they would grow stronger together, that her act of selflessness would cement their bond forever. Little did she know, Daniel Reynolds had different plans. He wasn't just asking for help. He was using her. He promised her everything in return: love, loyalty, a life together, a future. But promises, as she would soon learn, were nothing but empty words. She thought she knew him, believed in him. So when Daniel asked for another favor, a loan of $100,000 to invest in his business, she trusted him. She believed in him enough to give him everything. Again. What could go wrong? She had given him her kidney, she had loaned him money, her trust was absolute. But what did Daniel do with that trust? With that love? He betrayed her. In the most horrific, heartless way imaginable. He lied, he cheated, and when she finally discovered the truth, when she caught him in the act, he didn't apologize. He didn't beg for forgiveness. No, instead he shot her, left her to die. It wasn't the first betrayal Vanessa had faced, but this one was different. This time the betrayal was lethal. He took everything from her, not just her money, not just her trust, but her life. But that's not the end of the story. Because as the police dug deeper into the investigation, they uncovered a truth so twisted, so shocking, it would turn the entire story upside down. Was Daniel just another cold-blooded criminal? Or was he being manipulated by someone far darker than anyone could have imagined? Someone who had orchestrated this betrayal from the very beginning, pulling strings in the shadows, turning love into a deadly game. The truth was about to unravel, but it would leave everyone questioning what loyalty really means and how far someone will go for revenge. Stick with me as we dive deeper into this twisted tale of love, lies, and lethal betrayal. What happens when the person you save, the person you trust, turns out to be the one who will destroy you? The answers may shock you, and the truth, well, the truth is darker than you could ever imagine. Welcome to the Untold Crime Chronicles, where we uncover the darkest, most shocking true crime stories that will leave you speechless. Before we dive into today's mind-blowing case, take a quick second to subscribe to our channel. It's the biggest way you can support us. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Also, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment below, and share it with your friends. Let's keep exposing the untold truths together. Now, let's get into the story. This is the story of Vanessa Carter, Daniel Reynolds, and a betrayal that would leave everyone wondering, who's the real villain? For a while, it seemed like a dream come true. Vanessa had saved Daniel's life, sacrificing a piece of herself to give him a second chance. And in return, he promised her the world. The future they would build together, the life they'd share. They were inseparable, or so she thought. Daniel had recovered well from the transplant. His energy returned, and with it his charisma. He was once again the man Vanessa had fallen for, the man who smiled at her across the dinner table, held her hand in public, and whispered promises of forever in her ear. Every moment was filled with gratitude and affection. He thanked her constantly, endlessly, for giving him the gift of life. He couldn't believe how lucky he was to have her. "You saved me," Daniel would say, his eyes full of emotion. "I owe you everything. You're my hero, Vanessa. You've given me a chance to live, and I'm going to make it count. I'll spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you." He swore to her, swore on the life she had literally given him, that he would never take her love for granted. They were a team. He would always be there for her, just as she had been there for him. But as the weeks passed, a subtle shift began to take place. Things weren't as perfect as they seemed. At first, it was small. Little moments when Daniel seemed distant, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He was still affectionate, still saying all the right things, but there was something missing. He no longer looked at her like the woman he couldn't live without. His gratitude seemed to have a coldness to it now, like a performance. He began to pull away, not physically, but emotionally. He would come home late from work more often, claiming he was busy with business. When they were together, he avoided deeper conversations about their future. The talk of marriage, of children, of growing old together, once so frequent and heartfelt, was now brushed aside. "We'll talk about it later," he would say, with a distracted smile, his eyes elsewhere. His attention, once solely on her, began drifting. Vanessa, ever trusting, chalked it up to stress. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. He had just gone through a major health scare. Maybe it was that. Maybe he was simply adjusting to life after the transplant. She told herself that it was nothing, that the connection they shared was strong enough to survive anything. But in her heart, she couldn't help but feel a nagging doubt. It wasn't just the emotional distance that troubled her. It was the subtle avoidance of intimacy. Daniel stopped initiating affection, and when Vanessa tried to bring up their future again, he brushed it off. His business trips became more frequent. He started staying out later, coming home only to retreat into his own world. The phone calls and texts from unknown numbers seemed to increase, and his answers became more curt, more dismissive. Each time she asked, he'd offer an excuse. "Just work, babe, just work." But something in his tone, the evasive way he said it, made Vanessa uneasy. Something didn't sit right. Vanessa had always believed in love. In the kind of love that endures, the kind that makes sacrifices worth it. She wanted to believe in him, to believe that he hadn't changed. But with each passing day, the distance between them seemed to grow. She tried to talk to him, to ask him what was wrong, but Daniel became more distant, more guarded. The more she reached out, the more he pulled away. What was Daniel truly planning? Was he the man he had promised to be? Or was he hiding something darker, something Vanessa couldn't see? She thought she knew him. She had trusted him with her life. But now, doubt began to creep in. Could the man who once promised to love her forever really be the same person who was keeping secrets from her? Was this love? Or was it just a game? Vanessa chose to ignore the signs. She told herself it was just a phase, that everything would return to normal. But the more she ignored her instincts, the more Daniel's true intentions slipped further into the shadows. And in the end, the truth would be far darker than she ever could have imagined. The perfect illusion was shattering before Vanessa's eyes, but she couldn't yet see the full scope of the truth. Not until that fateful night when she walked in on the man she had loved, the man she had saved, doing the unthinkable. It had been a long day for Vanessa, one filled with work, endless worry about Daniel's distant behavior, and questions she couldn't answer. She had been feeling more and more like a stranger in her own home. But when she walked through that front door, she hoped to finally have a conversation that would clear the air. She never expected to walk into this. There, in their bed, in their home, was Daniel, entangled with another woman. Vanessa froze in the doorway, her heart stopping in an instant. The woman, who Daniel had introduced as a business partner, was lying in the bed, wrapped in his arms, as though nothing was wrong, as though this was a normal, everyday occurrence. But that wasn't what struck Vanessa. No, what shattered her world was the sight of the woman wearing an engagement ring, the same type of ring Vanessa had worn for months. "Daniel?" Vanessa's voice barely made it past her lips, a whisper of confusion, a cry of desperation. Daniel slowly turned, his face registering shock, but only for a moment. The guilt, the shame, it all vanished when his cold, calculating eyes met hers. He had no remorse, no apology, not even the decency to feel sorry for the woman who had saved his life. "Vanessa, Daniel began, but his words were cut short by the sharp pain of reality. Vanessa's heart shattered. This wasn't the man she had trusted, the man she had once seen a future with. This was a stranger, someone who had been lying to her from the start. "Who is she, Daniel? What is going on here?" Vanessa's voice was trembling with disbelief, her heart pounding in her chest. The woman, smug in her position, barely looked up, her hand resting possessively on Daniel's chest. Vanessa couldn't even look at her. All she could see was the betrayal, the manipulation, the lies. Daniel's response was as cold as ice. "Her name is Sarah. We've been together for a while now, Vanessa. You know, from before the transplant. We had an understanding, but I needed you to save me, so I kept you around. You were the perfect woman for the job. I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you should have known you were just a stepping stone." "You used me," Vanessa whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You used me for my kidney? For my money? For everything I had to give you?" "Yes," Daniel admitted, his voice flat and emotionless. "I never intended to be faithful to you, Vanessa. You were just a means to an end. Now that I'm healthy again, I'm free to move on with Sarah. She's the one I want to be with. She's the one I'm going to build a future with." Everything Vanessa thought she knew, everything she believed about their relationship had been a lie, a facade, a carefully constructed illusion built on promises, on trust, on love. But it was all just a game to Daniel, a game she had lost. In that moment, the rage inside Vanessa exploded. She felt betrayed not just by the man she loved, but by the very world that had allowed this to happen. She had given him everything, her kidney, her money, her soul. And for what? For this cold-hearted truth? "You're a monster," Vanessa spat, her eyes burning with fury. "I will expose you for what you are. I will tell everyone the truth. No one will believe your lies when they hear what you've done to me." But in the heat of that confrontation, something inside Daniel snapped. His cold demeanor vanished, replaced by a frantic, desperate rage. He couldn't let her expose him. He couldn't let her destroy everything he had worked for. With one swift movement, Daniel reached for the gun he had hidden under the bed, a weapon he had planned to use to silence anyone who got in his way. And then, before Vanessa could even react, the room was filled with the deafening sound of a gunshot. Vanessa staggered back, the force of the shot sending her crashing to the floor. Blood pooled around her as she fought to stay conscious, her body betraying her, the pain overwhelming her. She had saved his life, trusted him, loved him. Yet in the end, it wasn't love that saved her. It was the unforgiving hand of betrayal. But what drove Daniel to such violence? Was this a crime of passion, a momentary lapse in judgment driven by the anger of being exposed? Or was there something darker at play here, a calculated, cold-blooded decision to eliminate the one person who knew the truth? As the police would soon discover, the motives behind the shooting were far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. And what happened next would reveal the truth that would change everything. The investigation into Vanessa's shooting would uncover a twisted plot, a web of deceit, manipulation, and a hidden mastermind who had been pulling the strings all along. But Vanessa's sacrifice wasn't in vain. The truth would come out, and Daniel Reynolds would pay for what he had done. Vanessa lay on the cold hospital bed, her life hanging by a thread. The gunshot had nearly killed her, but the survival instinct in her, bolstered by the love and hope she had for a future with Daniel, kept her clinging to life. She had given him everything, trusted him with her life, and now she was fighting for hers. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, barely breathing. The doctors worked tirelessly, performing emergency surgery, and her blood pressure dropped dangerously low. But Vanessa didn't give up. Despite the odds, she survived, her body weak, but her will to live stronger than ever. Meanwhile, the police began their investigation into the shooting. They quickly determined that Daniel Reynolds had fled the scene, leaving Vanessa to die alone in a pool of her own blood. His actions, his coldness, his lack of remorse spoke volumes. But the question remained, why did he do it? Why would a man who once promised his loyalty, his love, his life to Vanessa, turn on her so brutally? Detective Harris was assigned to the case. He had seen his fair share of brutal crimes, but there was something about this one that didn't sit right. The victim was a nurse, a kind woman who had literally given part of her body to save a man's life. The motive seemed unclear. Was it just a crime of passion? A momentary fit of rage? Or was there something more at play here? As the investigation progressed, new pieces began to fall into place. Daniel had been seen in the hours leading up to the shooting, acting strangely, nervous, even agitated. But what the police didn't expect to find was the involvement of a third party, Samantha, Daniel's new fiancée, the woman Vanessa had never suspected. The breakthrough came when Detective Harris discovered a series of secret text messages between Daniel and Samantha. These weren't just messages of affection or promises of a future together. They were messages urging Daniel to leave Vanessa for good, to cut ties with her completely, to move on. Vanessa's just holding you back, Daniel. You've done your part. You gave her everything you could. Now it's time for you to focus on us, on our future. Just end it with her. We'll be free, and we'll have everything we've ever wanted. Once she's out of the picture, we can take over the business and finally be together. Don't worry about the consequences. I'll be there for you. As the messages were pieced together, Detective Harris uncovered a chilling truth. Samantha wasn't just a passive participant in Daniel's betrayal. She was the mastermind. She had been the one pulling the strings, encouraging Daniel to go further and further until he reached the point of no return. The promise she made to him was clear. Once Vanessa was out of the picture, she would take over the business Daniel had promised Vanessa, and she would take Vanessa's place as his wife. Samantha's motive was far more calculated than anyone had originally realized. She didn't just want Daniel. She wanted the power, the wealth, the life that Vanessa had. She had been planning this from the beginning, using her charm, her influence, and her manipulative words to drive Daniel to commit murder. But why would Samantha go so far? Why would she push Daniel to murder Vanessa, a woman he had once promised to love and cherish? Was it just greed? Power? Or was there something darker at play here? Something that went beyond mere ambition? Samantha's past was beginning to unravel in the investigation. The more the police dug into her background, the more they uncovered secrets, lies, and hidden connections that painted a disturbing picture. It turned out that Samantha had been in debt, her financial situation dire. And in Daniel, she saw the way out. But there was another layer to her motivations: revenge. She had learned about Daniel's past relationship with Vanessa and saw her as a threat, someone who would keep Daniel tied to the past and prevent him from reaching his potential. But the question remained, had she always planned this? Or was it a more desperate move, one born from the fear of losing Daniel to a woman he could never truly let go of? The line between manipulation and murder began to blur as the police pieced together the events leading up to the tragic shooting. When Samantha was finally brought in for questioning, her demeanor was calm, too calm. She denied everything at first, but as the evidence mounted, as the details of her involvement were laid bare, her story began to crumble. She admitted to texting Daniel, convincing him that Vanessa was in the way, but she claimed she hadn't known he would actually kill her. Yet as the truth came to light, it became clear. Samantha wasn't just a passive observer. She had encouraged the violence and in doing so, had become as guilty as Daniel himself. Samantha's cold, calculated actions, the way she manipulated Daniel, had led to a life lost. And yet, in her eyes, all that mattered was the promise of a new life, a new beginning, one built on blood and betrayal. For months, she had been in his corner. She had fought for him, given him life. And now, the same man whose life she saved had tried to take hers. But what Daniel didn't realize, what neither he nor Samantha saw coming, was that Vanessa survived. As Vanessa lay in the hospital, struggling to recover, the police worked tirelessly to bring her attacker to justice. It didn't take long before the true depths of Samantha's betrayal were uncovered. Detectives pored over Daniel's phone records, and what they found sent shockwaves through the case. Text after text, call after call. It wasn't just a moment of passion. It wasn't just a reckless decision made in the heat of betrayal. This was premeditated, and at the center of it all was Samantha. "She's in the way, Daniel. She's holding you back. If you want a real future with me, you need to handle this. You owe me everything. Don't let her take our future away. You know what needs to be done. If you can't do it, maybe I'll have to." For months, Samantha had been urging Daniel to get rid of Vanessa. For months, she had poisoned his mind with the idea that Vanessa was an obstacle, something disposable. Not a woman, not a human being, just a hurdle standing in the way of her desires. With enough evidence to bury her, the police moved in. Samantha was arrested at her apartment just as she was packing her bags to flee the state. Her reaction? Cold, almost indifferent. As if she had expected this moment but was prepared to twist the narrative in her favor. Even with her hands cuffed, Samantha's lips curled into a chilling smirk. She was dangerous not because she was violent, but because she believed she could control everything, everyone. But this time, she had lost. As for Daniel, his capture was swift. He had been found hiding out at a rundown motel, looking nothing like the confident, charming man Vanessa once loved. He didn't fight. He didn't even run. Instead, he sat there, eyes hollow, as if the weight of his actions had finally caught up with him. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Detective Harris asked, leaning forward, studying the man before him. Daniel scoffed. "It wasn't my fault." Those words, so casual, so void of accountability, hung in the air like poison. He didn't deny it. He didn't cry or beg for forgiveness. Instead, he blamed Samantha. "She pushed me into it. She wouldn't let it go. I never wanted to kill Vanessa. I just snapped. A bullet in the woman who gave you life, and you're sitting here playing victim?" But Daniel was beyond redemption. In his mind, he was just a man who had been caught in the wrong situation, a man who had been pressured into murder. But the truth was simpler than that. He made a choice, a selfish, cowardly, irreversible choice. As Vanessa recovered, she was faced with an unbearable truth. The man she saved had tried to kill her for a new life with another woman. It wasn't just the physical scars that would take time to heal. It was the betrayal, the heartache, the realization that the man she had sacrificed for never truly loved her. The love she thought was real had been a lie. The future she had imagined was built on deception. And now, she had to live with the knowledge that the man she gave a part of herself to had tried to take everything from her. And what about Samantha? Had this always been her plan? Had she always intended to steal Daniel, take Vanessa's place, and claim everything for herself? Or had she simply taken advantage of a man weak enough to be manipulated? Was there something even darker she had planned that was never discovered? In the end, justice was served. Daniel and Samantha were both convicted, Daniel for attempted murder, Samantha for conspiracy and tampering with evidence. Their fates were sealed, their once perfect future shattered into pieces. But for Vanessa, the scars remained, both the ones on her body and the ones buried deep in her heart. She had given him her kidney, her money, her trust, her love, and in return, she had received a bullet. Perhaps the real tragedy wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that Vanessa had loved a man who was never capable of truly loving her back. The bullet should have killed her. The betrayal should have broken her. But against all odds, Vanessa survived. And now, as she stood at the edge of her new life, she realized one thing. She would never be the same. Weeks turned into months. The physical wounds healed, but the scars, the emotional devastation, the loss of trust, the shattering of her heart, those would last a lifetime. Vanessa had sacrificed everything for Daniel, her money, her body, her health, her love, and in return she got nothing but betrayal and a near-death experience. As she looked back, she could finally see it for what it was, an illusion. Daniel had never truly loved her. He had played the role of a devoted partner. But behind the scenes, he had been plotting his escape, his next move, his new life with Samantha. And Samantha? She was the real mastermind. The woman Vanessa once saw as a business partner had been nothing more than a snake in disguise, a woman willing to kill just to get what she wanted. Justice was swift, but it was cold comfort. Daniel stood trial for attempted murder, and yet, even as the verdict was read, he showed no remorse. Daniel Reynolds, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder. He barely reacted. No tears, no apologies, just a blank stare, as if even now he refused to accept the weight of his crimes. And as for Samantha, the evidence against her was overwhelming. She had orchestrated the crime. She had pushed Daniel to pull the trigger. She had wanted Vanessa dead, and the court saw no redemption in her. Samantha Howard, you are sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Vanessa should have felt victorious. But how do you celebrate when the life you once knew is gone? In the end, Vanessa walked away with her life. But she walked away alone. She had lost a kidney, her money, her trust, her love. She had given everything to a man who was never who he claimed to be. And now, she had to rebuild from nothing. But there was one thing Vanessa still had, a second chance, a chance to start over, to heal, to learn that true love isn't just about sacrifice, but about mutual respect, real trust, and knowing when to walk away. This wasn't just a love story gone wrong. This was a lesson, a warning. Trust is sacred. Love should never be blind, and the most dangerous people in our lives are often the ones we trust the most. What do you think? Do you believe Daniel was truly manipulated, or was he always a monster? Could Vanessa have seen the red flags earlier? And do you think Samantha's life sentence was justice? Or did she deserve even worse?
Let us know in the comments below.
And if you haven't already, subscribe now to hear more shocking true crime stories like this one. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit that notification bell, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.